probably like, if I could, I always think about what would I do if I could go back and talk to myself, and I think the biggest mistake we made is we started to, when we graduated, that we were trying to break in, we started to chase the trends. Like I remember at the time, found footage was all the rage, like Paranormal Activity had come out. We didn't particularly respond to found footage, but we thought, well, maybe we can do, our take on it. So you end up writing stuff that's not really in your voice or not something that you're passionate about, just because you think that's what sort of the market is asking for or demanding. And I think the minute we stopped doing that and we just wrote, cut out all the noise in terms of what the industry is clamoring for or seeming like they want, and just wrote something that was exactly just what we wanted, and we weren't worrying about even if it would sell or how it would sell. That was the first time we wrote something that worked. That was a movie. That was the first sale we ever had. And then for Stranger Things, it was a TV show. And I mean, our first TV show. And, you get all sorts of people telling you things like, you can't do this, you can't sell a show with kids. The 80s are not in right now. So you get all this sort of advice telling you what a bad idea this is. And, we felt confident it was something there. So I think, as cheesy as it is, it's like follow your heart, listen to yourself, and write what you're passionate about. And I think because that's going to result in the best material, and people really need good material.
This is very specific to us, but a couple, we're from North Carolina. We didn't know anyone, so it was just interning and just trying to meet as many people as you could, just so we could give them our scripts. And that was the other thing, was just we always saw ourselves as directors, and I think a lot of people are like this. We grew up wanting to direct, and it wasn't about writing. But what we realized very early on is that we have to. The fastest way to get something, to actually direct something, is to write it. So we almost had to retrain our brains and teach ourselves how to write. But we focused so long on directing that we just sort of, we had to play a lot of catch up in terms of writing. So even if you don't see yourselves as a writer, don't be afraid to sort of jump in on that. Because if you're a director, you're writing in a sense. You're telling a story anyway. So it's just figuring out how to communicate that on the page. And so that was something we sort of had to teach ourselves, and once we were able to tell the story that that we felt good about, we were able to make our first film.
And then if you have a script that people want, and then you say I have to direct it, I mean that's the best way to get to direct something. I think. Or make a spectacular short film, but that didn't work for us. In that avenue, I think it's achievable. Which is to make a really splashy short and get hired off of that. I've seen it happen. I know it happens. Did not happen for us. So that route did not work for us. So that is a possible route. I think I think this, to me, my advice would be, write a killer script that's unique to you. The kids stuff, to me, it's like casting. That's kind of true, I think, of most sort of in terms of directing actors. I think when we always think of a director on set, you're like, oh, you got to be coaxing these performances out of these actors. But the reality is, like, you don't really have, especially on a television show, you don't really have the time for that. And oftentimes you find yourself getting in their way and messing them up. So I've learned that the most power that you have in terms of your control over performance is going to be in casting, because it completely shapes the show and the character and everything. And especially with kids, I would love to take more credit for coaxing these performances out of these children, but the most we can take credit for is really, I think it's casting, finding the kids, working with our amazing casting director, Carmen Cuba, finding them, putting them on set, praying that they clicked together, and they did, and then you just let them go. And you try not to get in their way or get in their heads, because I think the worst thing for an actor is to start overthinking it. But it's actually less difficult actually with children, especially the right child, because they're very sort of intuitive and they don't overthink things, and so you can capture some really incredible performances.
Writing is, for us, is the most difficult part of the process, but also certainly arguably the most important, because it doesn't matter how beautifully you shoot a script. If it's bad, it's still going to be bad. So it is really the most important part. But I think for us, you run into walls so often when you're writing. Luckily, we have a room of really talented writers to help us sort of figure out what the issues are. And what we've learned is that never be afraid to think outside the box. Like if something isn't feeling right on the page or working, always take a step back. We say zoom out. We're always saying this. Let's zoom out, and look at the bigger picture. Because once the big ideas are right, and like the concept of a scene is right, and if there's a drive to that scene, it really does it does write itself. So we at this point we've made so many mistakes that if a scene isn't writing itself, we quickly go, wait, let's stop spending time trying to force this to work, and let's zoom out and let's look at the big picture here, and then we re-break the scene. And then once we've done that, generally these scenes can actually write themselves fairly quickly.
I think it took us a long time to realize it actually shouldn't feel like a struggle, right? So if it's feeling like a too much of a struggle, then something is wrong. Like conceptually is wrong. And so we thought it was a struggle because we didn't know what we were doing or because it was challenging, but the truth was we had like bigger issues at hand. So that's the thing, and Ross is right in terms of sometimes it's very difficult to identify what that issue is, but you shouldn't be banging your head against the wall constantly. I mean, it shouldn't be that much of a struggle. But yeah, Ross is right in that we're still honestly figuring out. Like, I don't think we're ever going to perfect a process that gets these scripts written as quickly as we wish they were written.
One thing we've learned about this industry is that it feels like people who have had success really do want to, if you ask for their help, really do want to help it out. So, in our first film, Guillermo del Toro was making Pacific Rim right next to us, and he was great to us then, and continues to be great to us, and just sort of helping us through what was a very difficult process. And I don't know if we would have survived it without Guillermo.
And he's shockingly available. Like if you're having like a really hard time with something, you can call him.
Even now,
and he'll answer the phone.
Now, sometimes we'll just
it blows my mind.
We'll call him up and just say we're struggling with this. Do you have any advice? And he's been around, so he has wonderful advice. And then for our first TV project, it was Night Shyamalan when we did Wayward Pines, and he was also great with us in terms of we just learned so much from working with him just about storytelling and just how to deal with it and how to deal with the struggles that come with stories that aren't working and how to break through. And I think that he was great. And then when we went on to Stranger Things, Sean Levy, who's our producer, he's made so many films, and we were still we hadn't done a lot when we made that first season of Stranger Things. So just having him behind us and just sort of helping teach us of the way things work has just been incredibly helpful, and we continue to lean on him as a mentor.
And that's just some of it. I mean, for 99% of the people are, especially directors, fellow directors or fellow creators or writers are like very supportive of one another and very helpful if you ask them. I'm like, we're consistently shocked by how nice and generous everybody is with their time if you need help.